Okay, so this is the second tutorial and we're going to concentrate a lot on despill technique for this one. So I just thought I'd start here, and this is a bit of what we don't usually do with film. I'm showing it you because it's always amazing that actually it gives you quite nice results. And I'm not saying it's wrong, and if you want to work sort of straight out of the tin and quite quickly, then this is the thing. Putting your green screen in your background, so you're compositing in a Kia, also means that you're despilling. So you're kind of doing everything through the Kia, and then you would just render out from that, and you'd sort of have like, well, you'd at least have a slap comp. But it does do a really nice job. You've got like lots of hair detail. I mean, what we're going to get into is just a lot, starting to get a little bit into the art direction, and sort of showing you the control that you have with the process split up a little bit. The main thing, the main sort of difficulty with throwing everything through the Kia is it kind of automates, particularly the despill process. Now, some people do use key light just for its despill properties because they are pretty good. A kind of a popular trick is to put just one in the green channel, and then it kind of drives, you know, a pretty good amount of despill in your image, and they have that separate apart from the matting. But it's fairly unusual. It's not completely never done, but it's fairly unusual to do everything through the Kia in film. So what the problem is that people get really concerned, as well as turning actors purple is one thing, but that's not, I mean, a little bit you could argue, it sucked a bit of green out, but it's not that bad. So maybe not to concentrate on that just yet. The thing though that's the problem, and there's a good patch of reflected green there to show you, look, is that the luminance drops. So you lose the luminance in the despill process. So what was, you know, just because it's green, does it, you know, there, it's a highlight, it's photographic. So we want to keep that bit of brightness, but just stop it from being green, so literally despill it. What tends to happen when you're working by sort of default settings off the shelf is that because despill obviously is removing green, that's actually where the highest percentage of brightness in your image lives, is in the green channel. So, you know, you drop the green out, then you're going to drop the luminance out. So as film compositors, what we have to do is replace the luminance back after the despill process. And it's fiddly, I know, but that's a very important concept to share with you. So, you know, if you're wanted to grapple with that and get into a bit of that, then that's what makes the difference with feature film compositing. That's one of the things that we do is restore the luminance. So let's get into it. Let's delete this. So we don't often do that. That's the main problem, is that you don't have control over putting the luminance back. Get rid of those nodes there, and we'll have a look back. What we're going to talk about first is the edge despill. And like it describes, that's all about, you know, working in here in the edges. Now, this one can be sort of monkeyed with quite a bit more. You can get really into grading techniques, so you're colorizing the edge, and most people are thinking about colorizing the edge to suit the foreground. There are other techniques, or there are other sort of additions to this technique where you can sort of bias that foreground color by the brightness of the background. So it does get quite complicated quite quick. But just with the comp that we've got here, it'll be enough to show you just doing some edge work, and then we'll get into the core work in a second. But the edge one, this pipe that I've got coming through here, we're using a tool called Despill Madness that's available on Nukipedia. Nukipedia is a sort of a repository of tools that people have put up there that they've maybe used on jobs, and they've kind of packaged them up into a group, and sometimes they're just kept as a group, or sometimes rendered as a gizmo. There's sort of a collection of nodes inside that sometimes are very clever and sort of give you extra control, like sort of like plugins that you might have in other software, and it's all freely available from Nukipedia. You can download these extra tools. So in film we quite like Despill Madness because it's got these extra kind of grading sliders in it that let us really sort of, in the end, bias, go down to the end of the comp, you'll see, bias our edge to suit the, to integrate with the background. So when we've got the slap comp going, working away, we can start to tune this. And we can do quite a lot with it. So as well as colour, we can make it darker or brighter as well. So that if I switch it off, you'll see that it's doing that job, mostly on the edge. Okay, so looking at it directly, we have the option, and it's a useful option, to control the brightness of what looks like the background, but that's because we're looking at this despill before the matte is put in further down the script. So, so this ends up just being the edge, but that ability to make bright or dark is really important, because it all depends what background you're trying to make look real, you're trying to put in there. You know, if it's a sort of nighttime, darker, moodier sort of scene that's going in the back, then you want your edges there to go more towards dark. So it helps the comp to have that ability to pull down dark. Or if it's a really hot, bright day, Mediterranean sort of skies, then pulling up what ends up being the edges, so gammering up, shifting up the brightness of the edges, really helps sell the comp as well. And then you can take colour on or off. Okay, so you can sort of really work with colour in the edges there. We like this setup as well because quite often you can do extra colour, which is what I've done here. Now you'll see when this pops in what I've got. So it all looks a bit sort of, you know, bad because I've got this mask edge coming in, but as I said, that all goes when the matte is put in, and it goes to this fine edge in further down, but in a way that shows you a bit clearer what's going on there. So this, you wouldn't believe the amount of work that film compers put into doing this kind of thing, really sort of going through the image and doing grading or filtering in sort of pieces, in little bits through masks. So typically if you look at people's scripts, you'll have lots of this going on to really kind of get the comp final, to get that kind of finish and a bit of polish in there. So all I'm trying to do here, I was really unhappy that you've got this unmotivated highlight on his arm. It's coming maybe from a light source that was in the studio, but it doesn't suit what I'm trying to do in the comp, because there's no reason to have it. It's like this sort of very diffuse day. Where is that? It looks really stuck on. It just doesn't work. Doesn't look right. So this extra grade is basically just doing that. It's kind of darkening and shifting a little bit towards blue, the whole image. But it's giving me what I'm able to do is mask that. So this side input lets me mask the grade so that the color effect is only happening within pretty much this mask setup here. Look, so that color effect's only happening within there, and this is what I'm saying. You'll have this happening in, you know, it happens. It's such a basic thing, but tracking in masks like this that are very localized and very sort of feathered off to just kind of like take out the effect so that it's graduated out is really common, you know, for compositors in feature film to do all the time. So that's just taking, the main idea is to kind of take out this, it's on the edge, but it sort of drifts highlight on his arm, so I've taken it out there. And then what we need to look at next is having this ability to control and be really, really delicate about the sort of middle of actors. And that's all through this core setup here. Now, again, a key mix, that's basically compositing, you know, really. It's think of it as putting the core in this case, so the thing that's coming into A gets put through a mask on top of B. So we'll get into matting in the next tutorial, but you'll see here that let me just do one thing and put the viewer back to regular single view. There we go. So the key mix is important. What's giving me the ability to put the core over the edge despill is this mask here, look, which is coming from all the matting work that we'll get into next. All this feeds through here, and then that is allowing me to just feather inwards, so it feathers sort of inside the mask shape. So that where there's white gives me the A always. It's just the way the key mix works. So A is there over B, which is ends up being the edges, look. So I have this over this through this, going through that mask. So the core despill, sort of conversely, the other way around to matting, where it's the core matte that's pretty harsh. In despilling, the core despill is very delicate, because what we're doing is we're kind of having a second pass at being able to control what everybody is interested in the image. Well, I mean, people are interested in the edges, aren't they? It all has to work. But the actor, you know, that sort of foreground of your actor, you don't want it to go purple, and you stand a chance if you're, you know, if you're just sort of I suppose heavy-handed about this, or the tool is just sort of plonked in and its default settings are working, then it's too heavy. It goes and what we call sucks all the green out of, you know, particularly skin tones, but also bits of production design on the set, costumes. If you're losing, you know, if there's a hint of green in any of that, in any of the paint, any of the colour in the set, then despilling it overall, you know, just obviously takes that colour, takes the green out. So often you want to be really, it allows you to fine tune on despill madness, and you just want to kind of really ease off and just check that you've not, you know, keep some green into flesh tones is what we're saying. So so say there was my kind of neutral sweet spot, neither too, you know, greens removed, but I've not gone too magenta. So it may be that then you decide as a compositor that there's still little local areas of facets of the face or surfaces that are picking up kind of green reflection from the screen. So we can use a second despill. I've used hue correct in this case, which is a sort of a color corrector, and allows me to pull you know, a specific hue of green, sort of pull it down to remove it. But again, I don't want that happening all over the image. So key mix again lets me put in masks. Yet again, this idea of having little localized masks, and that just tells it that I only want the hue correct, so the very local, specific area, you know, piece by piece despill to go in there, and then that goes back over, you know, in there. So I've got everything there. You can see, look, what's happening. So see, just very localized. So I can be perhaps, you know, a little heavier with this because it's only in the areas where it needs it. So the idea of this generally is, think about with this main sort of, this is the main one, be really delicate. It's almost like a light dusting of despill with that one. And then if there are, you still see, you know, issues, problems where there's bits of green, then tackle those, you know, bit by bit. So through a mask, you know, do a second despill that's masked and layer in HitFilm, After Effects, whichever software you're using. If it's a layer based, layer that on top of everything else. So the last thing to talk about is this business that we've got here. If you're kind of quite technical and into sort of maths and Boolean logic, then you'll be quite into this. It's quite an interesting concept photographically as well, though. So bear with me. I'll try and sort of explain what's happening here. So despill there, and what we're about is making sure it's almost setting up a routine that guarantees that the luminance has been restored back in the image. So down, when this gets plugged in, we've not lost any luminance. And again, that's just because of despill, getting rid of green. Green's where the brightness of the image, the luminance of the image lives. So it gets lost. We've got to put it back. It's a nice little routine. So just having the actual despill and literally minusing, so subtracting those green pixels away from the original plate, we get that. That's just the inherent despill on its own that we're getting at the minus. We want to just make that a luminant image. So the easiest way of doing that is to remove the colour. So through the saturation operation in Nuke and every other bit of software, including Photoshop, you can use sort of remove saturation, pull it all the way down, so we've just got luminance then. Okay, and so what we're doing is we're just adding that back after everything. So we add the luminance back into the to the despill, and then we're safe. Then then we've done a sort of a perfect a job as we can do. We put the brightness back, and people are really concerned about that in film. So it's kind of an important one to tell you about. So that's that there. So that's it. So then we're ready to look at the actual keying side of things in a bit more detail. So let's just recap. So what have we learnt there? What have we gone through? So we don't ever use, or generally we don't do one node that's doing the comp and the despill all in one. So we usually split comp. So that the despill itself, though, that's split a further 2 times to give us the edge and then to give us the core. So what's a key idea is that we can do quite a lot of grading and making bright or dark the actual edges, and that often helps the comp at the end, when you're looking, and it looks more integrated if you worked there. But you can't just carry that through for the middle of actors and the middle of sets, so that we have a second despill. It's a very light touch one, and it allows us to control and not suck the green out of the plate, and we can do that really localized little bit of despill. If there's little reflected areas or sides of noses that you saw there and stuff that have got a little bit more green in, we can take them out just through a mask. And so that's the routine really. So we've looked at despilling now. So we'll look next at matting in tutorial 3.